so I never filed. But anyway, we left Heber. There was 5 outfits. I drove one team for him. He had 3 horses on another outfit. We woke up in the night and there was about 8 inches of snow, and it was just a snowing to beat the band. And that was the old road, you know, we had to travel. It was up and down, crossed that creek so many times, getting ahead of Daniels Canyon. We were 7 days getting up Daniels Canyon with those horses. We'd take them all and break a trail and then go back and pick up one outfit. Some days we wouldn't even have to move camp. Didn't get very far. We finally got over the top and got out here on the reservation. I fooled around there a while and helped him. Balance of 1908 and I went to work for some sheep outfits from Heber. Coleman, you remember them? Crook. Coleman I started to work for. And I later worked for a Smith. I wasn't satisfied with that country, so I thought I'd look around a little bit. And I accumulated a couple of horses and 6-shooter and bike, and took off and was up into Bridger Valley that summer. And then I come back late in the fall, and I worked for a sheep man a while, and then I got the stage and went into Dragon, Utah. That was really a frontier town them days, I'll tell you. And that time there was lots of Indians from the White River tribe out here. And I got acquainted with Chief Atchee. You've probably heard of him. Atchee. Him and McCook were brothers. But Atchee was him and his squaw both were very intelligent people. And he was a fellow that Indians, you know, not usually talkative. They don't say much. They might say yes or no if you ask them something, but he was telling me all about this country, what had been going on. He figured it was wrong. He said, white men coming in and selling off the ground, which he was right, I admitted. And then I was a stray man for that Lazy Y cattle outfit. Had their headquarters over in Colorado. Well, they had about 15,000 head of cattle at the time. They employed some Indians, good riders. And after the spring roundup, when they got the cattle out, scattered out on the range, my job was at Bitter Creek country, picking up strays and pushing stuff back. See, they owned cattle from down there on Pinion Mesa and above Grand Junction, clean over to Bear River. Well, in 1906, I'm pretty sure it was summer 1906, in June, then he was a temporary superintendent down here, John McAndrews. I knew him later, too, knew him for years. But anyhow, he took Atchee and all his chief's costume and the like back to Washington, D.C. Well, they were gone 3 months. They were in Washington, D.C., and they were in the White House a number of times, 8 in there. And then they was in Philadelphia, and then Chicago, and then back home. But Atchee would never fail to tell me the story about his trip back there, and it was funny. He'd say, well, I'd drop in there, and she always insisted she cook supper. And of course, it's always hungry, usually dark when you get in. I'd camp there. We sat around the campfire and talk a little, but he'd finally say, you savvy Washington, D.C.? I'd say, no. Well, he'd tell me all about it. And he'd say, you savvy Big Chief McKinley? I'd say, no. Well, McKinley was Big Tillicum, he said, friend. And when he got through that story, then you savvy Philadelphia? No. He said, lots of gold, big piles, gold like this. See. He said, they say that big chief there say someday Indians have all this. Well, that come true in a way, didn't it? Well, then the last was Chicago. And apparently old Johnny took him through a lot of burlesque shows. He said, lots of pretty good Chicago, lots of them, he said. Pretty good savvy me, he'd say. I guess they introduced him around. Make him home, but it didn't matter what conversation you started. Always, every time you stop, he'd branch out and tell me this whole story. Well, it'd take a midnight, all the details of it. Well, then one summer of 1910, I was working for that Lazy By cattle outfit. And I got acquainted with lots of them there, especially those on Bitter Creek and Willard Creek in that country. And I was temporary, see, just for that summer. Well, my job was over as soon as the last roundup was made long in September, and I was hunting another job, and I come down to Dragon. And the only job I could find was tending bar. And that was quite a problem there. It was always against the law of them days for Indians to have liquor. And you sure could get in the penitentiary if they found it out. Well, they was always in there begging liquor. Once in a great while, I did favor old Sam. I'd give him a half a pint, which is wrong. He wouldn't say nothing. Well, along towards spring, I sure got tired of that job, and I was going to go up and see if I could find a job among the cow outfits, and there was a tin horn gambler there and me that bunked together. I run a poker game there part of the time for the owner of the saloon. And we figured out a little trip to take, and he wanted to go with me. And I knew a sheep man from Vernal, McCoy, that had a herd of sheep over in that country there. He took his life in his hands for going in there. But anyway, we decided we'd go up to McCoy's camp, kind of get the layout of the country, and we took some few decks of cards along. Because I knew that country was, on this side of the book cliffs, was lots of sheep outfits in there. And Mexican herders, and they always carried, they were their own bank. Whatever they had with them. Well, we met so many that I knew, so many Indians, and we'd visited. We left early, and we should have been there by noon, and it was getting dark when we come to old Sam's camp. I said, well, we can find out where McCoy's camp is. He'd know. I said, why, there couldn't be a strange chipmunk come in this country. They wouldn't know it. And, well, Sam and his squaw were sitting by a campfire and just enjoying the evening, just about dark. Rode up and I said, hello, Sam. And he kind of looked up at me and he said, no savvy you. Sam, I said, what's the matter here? There's lots of times when the Bardones cowboy come here and eat supper and breakfast with you. He'd look a little more. No savvy. And Ed Brown says, well, what do you suppose the matter of him? He says, you told me how well you knew him. Oh, I say, it's just one of those things that an Indian pulls once in a while. Well, when we left town, a friend of this herder who was working for McCoy wanted to know if he'd take a couple of quarts of liquor with us. Give to him. I never did drink. I mean, I got drunk or anything, take one once in a while. We studied a while there, and I said, well, I just can't figure it out. I said, what's the matter, Sam? Don't you sab me? And I got off my horse and got close. No. So I just did my slicker and dug out a bottle of this liquor and held it out. Me savvy you now, he said. Long time Bardones cowboy. And he gave me the exact dates that I was there and eat with him, stayed over. I started to put it up. No, he said, you give me. And I said, no, get in jail. I said, why couldn't you see a big man like me? You couldn't see me, but you could see that bottle of liquor. Yeah, he says, I getting bad sometimes. Temporary blindness again. Well, I said, no, I want to know where McCoy's camp is. He said, all right. And he brushes off the dust there, and he gave me a detailed map of that, where the camp was. I knew pretty close, but I just didn't want to lay out. He followed us. I gave him a drink out of it, all right. He was going to take a big one. I fooled him with it. He put that up to the skyline where you see on the mountain. He slipped that finger down about that far. Took a drink, and he didn't get quite there, so he takes another one. I got away from him, but he followed me a half a mile up the canyon, explaining to me how he'd get blind once in a while. He couldn't see very good. Why he could see better than I could in it. Well, when I was over there in that country, if I found a few cattle, I used a bunch of them there at old Sam's place, in the mountains, Rat Hole Creek. He was quite industrious. Him and his squawkles raised a good garden, raised a little hay. McCook lived just a little farther up the country, and there's a great place for him to congregate and race horses. They all had race horses in there. And they'd bet a little on it. I really thoroughly enjoyed the times that I was up there, and I met lots of these young Indians. I knew, what's this Indian ranger that retired? Yeah. I knew his dad, knew his parents up there.
Did you help you paint it?
Yes.
You know anything about it?
Well, she was one of the most, she was really attractive and one of the most intelligent women that I ever knew. And of course, O'Ray was too. That was a friend of the wife. They were both in.
Did she ever mention the Meeker Massacre?
No,
Was she married after she came here? Was she ever married?
no, not that I know. But once in a while, when I'd be talking to old Sam, it'd get late, but he'd tell me about things that happened on the reservation. One bad thing he said happened up to Meeker. He said, this Captain Meeker was mean, and from what I learned, he was mean. He said that wasn't right. And they got drunk. They broke into the commissary there and got some liquor and got drunk. And they killed them all, I guess, with Meeker's wife and daughter. They captured her and took her to Durango. And then there's Pete Dillman, one of the pioneers of this country, and old Blackhawk down here, another. Went up in there and got him out. They took their life in their hands, of course, but they got him out and brought him back. Once in a while, he mentioned the bad things. He said white men wasn't all bad. He said Indians ain't all bad. Sometimes pretty bad. Well, he was right. The logic he had, he was reasonable to both sides. He always mentioned that he thought it was wrong for white men to open this country up without their consent and give it to others. It was. There's no kidding. Well, I rode with a lot of those Indian boys up there, and you just wouldn't find better people. George now, he remembers me when he was a little kid. I seen him pretty often. Or Lawrence. And there was another named George. He died years and years ago. And McCook and Atchee and a number of those older Indians there, they got to slipping peyote in this country, and they got to using that and killed them. They ought to hung every one of them when they caught them. Didn't. And once in a while, Atchee would mention some of the outlaws who used to hang out over here in Browns Park. 2 or 3 of them I knew personally. And I noticed in your book, you mentioned High Bernard is one of them. Well, he wasn't. He was a foreman for the 2-bar outfit over there for years. And winter of 1913, they brought about 2,000 head of cattle over Ashley Valley and fed him in there. And High was with him. And he never went back. That was the time when Coltharp was going to make $1 million or bust on sheep. And they come very near doing it. And he stayed and worked for them. He was quite a character. Pretty wild, a big man too, good looking fellow. He worked for them several years, and then I don't remember where he did go. He left this country somewhere. But there was Matt Warner in that wild bunch, and he later sort of gave himself up and they promised him a pardon if he'd go straight, and he later became a law officer in Price. And there was a Maxwell, that was my wife's uncle. He was one of the dirtiest crooks that ever lived. He was in that bunch with most of them fellas in there were pretty square and honest. In that way, they were robbers, all right, and lived that way. And another fellow that died not too long ago he married a local girl there in Ashley Valley, Pa's girl. Elsie Lay, well, I knew him. He had quite a ranch up at Robertson, Wyoming. And he used to come into Vernal there. That was after the saloons went dry. And he was a big, fine-looking fellow, and you never see him walking on the outside of the sidewalk. He was always next to his building. His eyes were on the move all the time. If he went into a building somewhere, he got back to the wall where nobody could get around him. Just that habit. His eyes were always on the move. But I guess after that gang broke up, and after he went straight, why, he was just good a citizen as anybody. He claimed he was up around Robertson. Just a fine man to ever live. Then there were some others. Even this, that killer outlaw, Harry Tracy. He tried to horn in on there, but he was too mean and crooked and treacherous, and they run him off. He later got killed. He killed quite a number of men, I understand. And then there was two others who was in that gang for a while. Well, there's Butch Cassidy. He was one of the pioneers of it. And there was Joe and Dave Tolliver. And this Ford DeJernet. He'd been dead quite a few years. He owned that Browns Park livestock outfit. And a lot of cattle. And he was pretty well, in with him in a way. He was a fellow you couldn't fool with, or he wasn't treacherous or anything like that, but you couldn't cross him up in a way. And his two boys got him out of scrape sometimes. Somebody pull a gun on him and tell him you're going to kill him, one or other. Both the boys would show up and pull a gun on the guy and run him out of the country. And I was up as 1914, I believe, that they dry gulched that can't have a hard time remembering names anymore. Mike Flynn. You ever hear him? He was working on all those outfits, particularly Ford DeJernet's outfit. Ford knew it, couldn't prove it. Somebody dry gulched him there in the narrows there in Potgrave. And I went up there after we heard him kill him. Hard dogs, and he's dead long ago. There's three of us rode up there, and I just can't remember the other guy's name now. Well, I've been out, I've hunted that Brook Cliff country, and I always make it a point to go and visit all the ones that are left. Of course, what's left now are just kids out there. All the old timers are gone. They were just as fine a people as ever lived, anywhere. If you was around anywhere, if they didn't have only one biscuit, they'd share it with you. And if you was a friend, you was a friend. There was no treachery. Like there is today. Yeah. Yeah. One time, I guess Mom would know the year, but that's not too important. There was a bunch of them left here and went up in Colorado. And they sent the soldiers out and brought them back. They were ragged and half-starved. Her father had a big orchard. Everything was just right. They just come in there, and the man invited them in to help themselves. And they eat all they could and took all they could tie up and clothes took with them. Sure pitiful. And Dragon was quite a place. It was the biggest part of those Indians, even from here, would come out there and camp on Missouri Creek. They always had a big camp there in the wintertime. And this Bart Owens that I worked for, and he'd kill him a beef pretty often. He says, the way I look at it, he says, whether it's an Indian or who it is, they get hungry enough, they're going to get a beef on it. And he says, if you give it to them, you make a good guy out of yourself, and they don't mean no loss to you. And they thought a lot of Bart. He'd get drunk and go down in there, and if there's any of his beef around, he'd go out and get a couple of them. He was a big friend of them. Well, I think at one time, that outfit had about 18,000 head of cattle on their books. It was a big outfit. And they were buying outfits out all along. Things were booming. And they took 19 and 18, that was their peak year. They had about 18,000 on their books. See, they'd telebrand it every year, and what they sold, they deduct that and then write off 5% as loss. And that I knew that wasn't enough. Anyhow, the year of 1919 and 20, the summer of 1919 was one of the driest years we've ever had in the West. It ruined a lot of cattlemen. No feed anywhere, no winter feed. And that just about ruined the Lazy Y entirely and several others. Well, there's another outfit, the N-Bars on Douglas Creek. They had several thousand head. And old Billy Wilson owned the outfit. Quite a character. When he shipped cattle, he used to ship at Mack and then to go into Grand Junction for a time and fruit it. It was quite a gathering place for cowmen. And old Billy's, he'd go to the bank and he'd get one of those big shot sacks full of nickels and dimes and quarters, just a few quarters. Get out on the street, and he always had a bottle of his hip, and he'd get to drinking, and he'd take them with a handful and scatter them out and get the kids around. He just delighted in it. Watch him scramble for it. Well, he'd spend quite a little that way. Do it every time he shipped any cattle.
Now, was this down in Hill Creek?
Well, that's in Douglas Creek, over east here.
Over east of
here? Yeah.
All right. Did you ever hear of Webster City down in Hill Creek?
Well, yeah, I've heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it.
You never did go.
No, I didn't know it. I knew the Turners that...
Let's stop right.
Mrs. Walkup now is going to talk to us and tell us about an incident that she knows.
This might not be, it might be against the Indian Service. They might find it. I knew the nurse at the Indian school about 40 years ago, 45 years ago. She took a little girl to raise, Daisy Atwine, and she just worshipped her. She would have kept her forever. She had her adopted, and she was bringing her up with the white children in the school. She was real bright and kept real clean and nice. And then this nurse took tuberculosis, and she had to be sent away. Well, she wanted to take the little girl with her and have her in a boarding school in the town, but they wouldn't allow her to. They wouldn't allow her to leave the reservation. And so it broke the lady's heart. She went without her. The little girl went back to the camps. The way they lived those days, the camps were terrible, dirty and no food. And in the winter, they froze and died with disease. But she went back there. The next summer, in July, a horseman, an Indian, rode in there one day and asked me if I were Mrs. Walkup. And he said he wanted me to go with him. I couldn't understand him very well, but I went with him right down around the corner, about 5 miles. When we got there, Daisy had been asking for me because this nurse used to come up on Sunday and get vegetables, and she knew me real well. And when I got there, she was unconscious. She didn't know me, but she was laying on a straw bed in the corner, and the flies were so thick that they just almost eat her up. And her temperature was 105. I couldn't do a thing for her when I got there, and all she could do is reach her hand out to me. And she didn't live only about 2 hours, and nothing on earth killed that child, only be taken away from where it was clean, and from this lady that loved her, took away and put in those dirty camps then, because the Indians didn't have any chance to be clean then. I don't know a lot more.
That's sad. Mrs. Walkup, right now we find a lot of this going on where children are changed from these homes, and it still isn't the best thing in the world, I'll tell you. Mr. Walkup, do you remember Chief Tabby, or would that have been too early for your time?
No, I didn't know him. There's a mountain named up here, Tabby Mountain. And by the way, too, there's a lake back here with one of the prettiest lakes in these mountains. It was named Chipeta. And as I understand it, Chipeta means rippling water. Is that right? And let's see, there's the Appa family lived near us when I was a ranger up here on Farm Creek. They're here 31 years. And they lost several children just not knowing how to take care of them. They were just fine people to ever live. Lawrence Appa was in the government service for 41 years, I believe. Finest fellows I ever knew. Well, I knew lots of them, and one of the very few times in my life that I've been sick, didn't go to the hospital, but I was sick up there, and the Indians heard of it, and the Sundance, they prayed that I'd get well. And I don't know whether that had any effect or not, but anyway, before the Sundance was over, I was in bed when they come up there and told her that they was going to pray for me. And when the Sundance was over, the next day they come up to see if I was, and I was well. I was out. They were sure pleased about it. They all respected me because I always treated them right. I knew another Indian, one of the older ones on the reservation. They figured when he died, he was about 114 years old. That was Uncle Sam. He had two stepsons. His first squad died and apparently was buried up here where the ranger station is now. And shortly after we moved, he came up there and said we'd have to move. That belonged to him. And we tried to explain to him we had nothing to do with it, but he always, if you excuse the language, he said the white sons of bitches come in and took everything they had. And that was right. And we'd always feed him, maybe give him a little money, and we'd give him food to take back to Red Rock. That was his squaw then. And no matter what we set out for him to eat, he'd always divide it half and half. And we'd say, no, you eat it. We'll give you something for Red Rock. No, he couldn't savvy that. He always had to save that, what to give him to eat, half of it. And she was blind. He'd always come in, the first thing he'd say, no food down to my camp, and Red Rock's hungry. He never said he was hungry. Well, he could drink a gallon of milk at a time. He liked milk awful well. And we'd fix him up some to take down, but in hot weather, I think it all spoiled before we got down to Red Rock. But he always wanted me to give him a team wagon and harness, and then I could keep that ranger station. Never could understand why white so-and-so took it away from him. It was pitiful. In 1931, I had a detail up on Grays River in Wyoming. I was gone for 3 months, and he died. But some of the last words he said, he wanted to see Uintapitchets. They called me Uintapitchets, all of them, tree policemen. Sure, sorry I wasn't here, but he'd been dead and buried about 6 weeks before I got back.
How long when they brought the Indians in here moving into Whiterocks, how did they live at that time? Was the government really providing food for them?
Most of the government, about all they'd done, they had what they call the beef issue. They'd just out east of Whiterocks, they had a slaughter yard, and it seems to me it was on Tuesday that they come up from Fort Duchesne and butchered some beef and give them all beef that they wanted. But all that they didn't take was a hide and horns, and they didn't always kill them very good beef either. I know that because I've been around there.
But they did go hungry.
There's no doubt about what they were hungry at all. They were just on a starvation basis all the time.
Many of them died.
Oh yes, you see down along up to the 20s before they got a dime from anywhere. All they got was just sometimes they'd dish a little other food before the soldiers left. But their numbers are about the lowest at that time. And there's just neglect, starvation, living in teepees in the wintertime, you know.
Do you remember the Superintendent McFogin that came in?
No, I didn't know him. There was Captain Hall. He was here quite a while, and I knew every one of them since then. I've been acquainted with all of them, except this one that's here now. I haven't got acquainted with him. But I used to go down there, and in our fire plans, we always included the Indians because they were good workers. They didn't gang up and waste any time talking. You could depend on them. And one of the best fighting crews I ever had was Indians. And if we had a fire, why, all they'd done was look at their plan, and they come without me before I could even phone. And we'd always get a truckload of grub and food and stuff. And then at Whiterocks, years before I retired, they had a community club there, mostly women. And this one time I had a big fire up here. That was in 47. It just a flash outfit, and we just couldn't get men and equipment there. And I'd already phoned to Vernal for a truckload of grub. Now, see, I had 100 men where they had a ration list that would feed them for 3 days. And the stores was all posted with a list so that everybody got in and helped make it up and get it going. I'd phoned in, and here come these women from Whiterocks. They had all kinds they had a 30-gallon of coffee, and they even had a 10-gallon can with cocoa in for others that didn't like it, and food. They just, one of the Indian women down there said it looked like George got trouble. Big
Feel good, doesn't it? Remember areas like that, how people were so kind to you.
Well, I wasn't tired. I just get thinking about things like that.
All right.
Mr. Walkup, tell me your birth date and your age at this time. And then this tape's about gone, and we'll stop when this is finished. Tell me how you see the bear dances and the sun dances as when you first knew them, and then we'll stop.
Well, I was born February 22nd, 1891. That makes me past 78 now. I'm 79. And I spent 61 years in this country. And, well, no, they're don't seem to be as earnest about the bear dance or sun dance anymore as they used to be. I know you know that. They got to commercializing on it, and, well, I can't blame them for that either, but it just isn't like it was originally. They were all in earnest when they were at that. There were bear dances supposed to be the mating season and all, and you never see any drunks around in the earlier days, and now there's just a lot of it. And it's just pitiful.